Hello, and welcome to this week's Movie Math, where, as Christians celebrate the resurrection of Jesus, Hollywood celebrates the resurrection of Warner Brothers. Yes, the much beleaguered studio not only has the top 2 movies of Easter weekend with Sinners, a surprise #1 over Minecraft, but Max, and not HBO, but Max itself, has actually managed to get one of its original shows into the Nielsen Originals Top 10. I'm talking about The Pitt. Could this mean not just green for Warner Brothers, but also maybe down the line some gold as well? And maybe this is also a very good sign for Superman. Ooh, let's discuss! And happy Easter to all who celebrate. So some eagle-eyed fans noted that Ryan Coogler thanked Christopher Nolan in the end credits for Sinners, largely because Nolan had given Coogler advice about filming in IMAX. But I think it's pretty clear that Coogler is becoming a box office draw himself, similar to Nolan, for everybody, but I think particularly with Black audiences. 49% of Sinners' opening weekend audience was Black, similar to the strong turnouts for not only both Black Panther movies, but the Creed films as well. Unfortunately, I couldn't find demographic information for the first Creed film, which is the one that Coogler himself directed. After that, he transitioned to executive producer and then outright producer. He was busy making Black Panther movies. But you'll note that Creed 2, for example, actually had a bigger turnout opening weekend for Caucasian audiences, indicating that Coogler's films also have broad appeal, which will be crucial for Sinners in the weeks ahead. Because Sinners was certainly the movie of its opening weekend, Easter weekend. It became a cultural event for audiences, tying in perfectly with the holiday. It was actually brilliant to release this film for Easter. It all started a couple of weeks ago with a near perfect Rotten Tomatoes score out of the gate, which got social media buzzing, and then it turned into an outright full-on boil as the movie actually hit theaters. Thursday night, we started seeing Sinners trending top 30. Many times it got into the top 10 all weekend long. That's amazing. Walk-up business was huge at 61%, meaning tickets were bought day of. Although it's important to point out that's just a bit ahead of Minecraft's opening weekend walk-up business, which was 57%, showing that ticket buying habits are changing. They're changing considerably. And that gives hope to certain movies that are tracking sort of soft right now, like Thunderbolts. Like, hey, if the Rotten Tomatoes score is good enough and the buzz is strong enough, then maybe people will show up last minute. Maybe that's why Marvel have decided this last minute gamble of a handful of fan screenings this Tuesday, April 22nd. I think it's all about creating a party atmosphere, which both Minecraft and Sinners managed to do. I don't know if Thunderbolts is that kind of movie. I don't know if it's a party type of movie. It's very interesting to see the space changing. How do you buy tickets these days? And what makes you buy a ticket at the last minute for a walk-up? What were your Minecraft and Sinners ticket buying scenarios? Now, obviously, Black Panther is the crown jewel of Ryan Coogler's resume, but it's an awfully sparkly crown overall. I mean, we're talking about a multi-hyphenate, a writer, director, producer who came up through indie films, yet he is proving to be a franchise machine. I think not since Spielberg have we seen, because, Nolan's a big deal, but he's not really a franchise maker. Now, that's fascinating. Really, I do see some Spielbergness here, which is very interesting, because we're talking, what other directors can you think of that are franchise machines? Because we've got Creed, Black Panther, and now Sinners, which is clearly designed to become a franchise, with 45% of audiences who've seen the movie so far saying they want a sequel. Only 45%? How does everybody who walks out of that movie not want a sequel? I want a sequel! And in fact, if I were Warner Brothers, I would greenlight a sequel this week to try and boost that second weekend box office. I don't know if the movie even needs it, but why take any chances? And I think that the film is, we're going to talk about budget and stuff like that, but I think the film is cost effective enough that they should definitely make a sequel. The audience scores for Sinners are stellar, and the movie is not only getting audiences into premium theaters, where it's doing extraordinarily well, but into theaters, period. Which is pretty funny, considering that another auteur filmmaker, Steven Soderbergh, has just been whining to the press about how his Black Bag film has failed to coax moviegoers back into theaters. He's like, this is the type of movie I've always made. Steven Soderbergh's like, I haven't changed, moviegoers have changed. And you're like, are you sure about that, Soderbergh, buddy? Or did you just not make that good a movie? I mean, movies these days not only need to be really, 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 really good, they gotta be extra. I think that's the word we're going for, extra, and a party. I think that's really important, and Coogler understood the assignment. Sure, Sinners has cultural, societal, and religious commentary. Very good commentary. But it's also got vampires, music, IMAX visuals, and the smolder, with not just one, but two Michael B. Jordans and Haley Steinfeld, with many people tweeting over the weekend they were not familiar with Haley Steinfeld's game. Yes, Steinfeld has been trying to make herself an A-lister for quite some time, and she's struggled despite having a strong core fan base, who I'm sure right now are like, what do you mean, struggling to be an A-lister? You know it's true. You know it's true. But good for her. She stuck with it. She's been slowly but surely building a career, and Sinners might very well be her breakout film as an adult actress. And also, she embraced with this film her Black and Filipino heritage, and I think in the process has expanded her core fan base. How do you feel about Haley Steinfeld after seeing Sinners? Back to Coogler's franchises, I think Creed is the model for Sinners, although Sinners is a slightly to moderately more expensive film, with a break-even point of $225. Creed 3, however, shows that that's very possible for this film to reach, although Creed 3 was the third film in that franchise. But, again, we'll see. But I think while Creed, the box office numbers for Creed make it look like it's very possible to hit that break-even point and surpass it, I also think it makes, that it's not 100% given. The second weekend for Sinners is going to be crucial to see if it was simply an Easter phenomenon. For instance, Warner Brothers, again, their recent The Color Purple remake, also with stellar audience scores, by the way, did huge numbers on Christmas Day. I believe it was like record-breaking, but then, and also driven substantially by the Black community, but then it fizzled very quickly. So we need to see if that's a similar situation for Sinners, or if Sinners is going to leg out. I think it's going to leg out because, The Color Purple only really had one really good day, whereas Sinners has been doing very well all weekend. Thankfully, there are no huge challengers this coming weekend, although The Accountant 2 is looking somewhat formidable and will take away Sinners' Dolby screens. Sinners will hold on to its IMAX screens, though, before Thunderbolts comes in and takes over all premium screens the following weekend as it kicks off the summer movie season. But Warner Brothers is saying, you know what? We'd be happy with just 170. What? Hollywood math is something special, boy. They're always moving the goalposts. But what Warner Brothers is saying is that they know that Sinners is going to do extremely well on digital and streaming. No doubt! But that doesn't change the break-even point. You can't play around with the break-even point. And also, there's a very good chance Sinners will meet that break-even point. You don't have to undercut it so like it's opening weekend and say we'd be happy with 170. Although, prove it and greenlight that sequel. As we've discussed, as everyone is discussing, Coogler will get the rights back to Sinners in 25 years. It will revert back to his family instead of forever being owned by Warner Brothers. And there's a big discussion about protecting studios' film libraries, but also, filmmakers protecting their own legacy and films. I talked about that a little bit in my Sinners review and how, I think Sylvester Stallone, also involved in the Creed franchise, by the way, I think has been like a cautionary tale. Although again, as I pointed out, you sign the best deal you can at the time. And Sylvester Stallone was a nobody when he made Rocky. And Coogler, of course, made this current deal coming off of the Black Panther and Creed films. All right, but thankfully, Coogler's ownership in 25 years isn't stopping Warner Brothers from fully backing the film. Surely in part because their film division needs a win so badly. So great timing on Coogler's part. And speaking of Christopher Nolan, of course, famously abandoned Warner Brothers after their day and date on Max Play during the pandemic. He was very unhappy about that and left for Universal. And Warner Brothers has been trying to replace him after they failed to be able to buy him back. They wrote him a huge check and he said thank you and stayed at Universal. But they've been trying to replace Nolan with a new auteur filmmaker ever since. So what does Warner Brothers have to push this year for awards season? Because, you push a film in two ways, box office and then down the line for awards. Mickey 17 just doesn't have the critical buzz to compete, I don't think, despite the pedigree of the film. So I think it's really just Sinners and Paul Thomas Anderson's one battle after another with Leonardo DiCaprio. Now also, The Substance and Heretic showed real gains for the horror genre in the awards space, and I think that surely Sinners will look to build on that momentum. It would be stupid not to. And I think it's looking very good for Ryan Coogler and hopefully Delroy Lindo when it comes to at least getting nominated. Outside of a Best Picture and Best Original Song nomination, Coogler has never been nominated. He has yet to be nominated for director or writer. And I think it's time. I think he should at least get a nomination in one or both of those categories. What do you think of Sinners' awards chances? It's especially post The Substance. So yes, Sinners is a surprise number one, because while it opened very strong on Thursday, Friday, horror films tend to open big at the front of the weekend, but then fall off as the weekend progresses. And family films go in the opposite direction. That's what Minecraft is. A little bit smaller on the front, they grow on Saturday and Sunday. But Sinners fell just 16% from Friday to Saturday, which bodes, by the way, very well for its long-term chances. That's incredible. And that's what allowed it to edge Minecraft out for the number one spot for the weekend. But Minecraft, again, also from Warner Brothers, was not far behind, and in its third weekend is already $700 million. That's incredible. That's incredible. It's so far past its break-even point. We love to see it. It's the biggest movie of the year so far domestically, and also by far Hollywood's biggest movie worldwide, with no other Hollywood film even close. Obviously, Disney is hoping to change that with their second Marvel movie of the year, and the tracking has inched up a bit over the past few days, but it's still nowhere near what Minecraft ended up opening with. But that was a surprise, again, thanks to last-minute walk-up business, and Thunderbolts is hoping to have a similar happy ending. Or hopefully happy, I guess you would call it a happy beginning for the box office run. But Disney's having a bad year. They're having a bad year. And so I think the bigger question is, what does this mean for Superman? Which also has shown tremendous interest on social media. Much more, most of the Disney social media chatter is, usually negative. But we're talking about like real, genuine social media chatter. And I think you've seen that for Minecraft and Sinners. And I think you could definitely put Superman in that camp. We're still not sure if it means anything, but it did translate to box office for Minecraft and Sinners. Now, obviously, Superman, while it started strong out of the gate with that first trailer drop, its ad campaign is, well, let's face it, it seems to be stalled. It could always start up again, though. Never say never. Josh Goldstein might have helped, put together the ad campaign or the PR campaign for Minecraft before he was fired, but no one's saying that he did anything for Sinners, and yet the movie still did very well, driven by interest in Ryan Coogler. And of course, also, people polled said that Ryan Coogler and Michael B. Jordan really drove a lot of the business. But I know we're all thinking the same thing. You know who else is a named filmmaker? James Gunn. And perhaps he could also, in a similar way, drive box office traffic for Superman. It's a pretty exciting possibility for Warner Brothers for sure, although it's worth pointing out that while the Rotten Tomatoes score didn't have an impact on Minecraft, it significantly helped Sinners, and I believe it will have a big impact in either direction on Superman. Now DC, like all comic book movies, they're having a rough time on Rotten Tomatoes these days, but James Gunn has historically done extremely well on Rotten Tomatoes, and I think this is where his immense support from the entertainment press could really help him. A lot of DC fans aren't feeling the love, but he really sees tremendous support from entertainment press. That's one of the things that got him through his scandal with Marvel. And Warner Brothers, as you can see, is on a roll right now. So what do you think this all means for Superman? As for the rest of the Easter weekend top 10, Angel Studios continued to do extremely well with their religious animated film, which saw an incredible second weekend hold. I mean, it's probably going to drop substantially after this, but they made quite a bit of money. They did very, very well. And we'll see how the film will later do in the digital space, and probably do pretty well every Easter after this. The same can't be said, though, in terms of second weekend drops for the rest of last weekend's new releases, which all saw substantial drops in their second weekends, with most audiences clearly now just waiting around for these movies to hit digital. I mean, they aren't horrible second weekend drops. For movies that had opened bigger, these would actually be pretty good. But the problem is these movies didn't open very big. So they're just not making a lot of money in theaters. They're just not extra. They just don't have that extra quality as we've been discussing. Although I would argue that Warfare is extra. But you know what the problem was there? Timing. Bad timing for Warfare. I would say that it's similar to when Mission Impossible opened the weekend before Barbenheimer, and then there just wasn't space for it. Warfare opened in too crowded a space, particularly because Disney strong-armed theaters to give them the premium screens when Warfare should have had those screens. It really should have looked for a weekend where it would be able to have played substantially in IMAX. It's really a shame. I feel such a shame for that film. Some in Hollywood are trying to say that A24 might still be able to turn Warfare into another The Hurt Locker, which was not only a strong awards contender but strong winner, despite barely registering at the box office. But Warfare doesn't have the heart or character development of The Hurt Locker, which, come to think of it, might have also kept it from reaching a larger audience in theaters. But again, I'm hopeful that it will still end up, maybe it'll find an audience on digital and streaming. A24 movies go to Max. It could do well down the line. But I think its best shot at awards nominations are in the craft categories. That is if A24 decides to even spend the money to campaign for it. At the very least, I hope it helps the careers of everyone involved in front of and behind the camera, because I really do think it's an extraordinary film. Although, again, it just goes to show how important heart is. Heart and character development are in movies. That's what long kept Nolan from winning any Oscars. And only when he finally put, his version of heart in Oppenheimer, did it work out for him. That's very interesting to me. All right, so meanwhile, Snow White is almost out of the top 10 in just its 5th weekend. Captain America managed to stay in the top 10 through its 8th weekend. Mufasa through its 12th weekend. Snow White is not even going to really make more than $200 million worldwide, far below its break-even point. And it makes it a failure at the level of Joker 2 and The Marvels. Whew! Now let's head over to streaming, where Disney is not faring much better. Yes, Daredevil, at this point, 4 episodes into its run, still hasn't been able to crack the Nielsen top 10, not even the originals chart. Meanwhile, Warner Brothers basks in the glow of not just The White Lotus still going strong in the overall chart, but as I said, and by the way, again, that's splitting its viewership numbers with HBO, so it's actually even bigger than that. They got to figure out a way to get around this HBO split. It's killing them. But also The Pitt, 12 episodes into a 15-episode run. Beautiful 15 episodes. Mwah! So runs so long, gets so many numbers. That's 12 episodes. That's long past the episode length of most streaming shows. But now it's cracked the original's top 10. The Pitt is a machine, just like The Doctors in its ER, and its producers are promising a season every single year, with the next season already promised for January 2026. A godsend in an era of 2 to 3 year breaks usually between seasons. And that has just hit The Last of Us. I think it's really suffering from such a long break, and also the fact that I think they underestimated how much so many people hated the second game, because audiences, at least out of the gate, are turning on it. This could ultimately work in the favor of The Pitt, as HBO could choose to push The White Lotus and The Pitt for award season instead of The Last of Us, and then of course they also have Hacks in the comedy section. But with drama, they'll be competing with Netflix's Adolescence, which exploded on Nielsen this week, and Apple TV's Severance, which broke into the overall chart, as you can see. That's a big deal for Apple TV, with its season 2 finale, which was this week. Remember, Nielsen is a month behind, and of course, that's also when bingers kicked in. What do you think are the strongest contenders so far for the drama category for the Emmys? The competition is tough. Do you think The Last of Us will stay competitive, or do you think it's not going to be able to compete with these other entries? The Residence, as you can see, is also very strong on this chart. Give us a season 2. I'm so worried about a season 2. And as you can see, Wicked is also on the overall chart as well, as this was the week that it had hit Peacock, where Universal had intentionally released it to undercut Snow White, which at the same time had hit theaters. Over on the originals chart, 1923 Season 2 and The Wheel of Time Season 3 both continue to do very well, with both shows finally finding their footing after Rocky starts. And wow, look at Invincible, still in the top 10 a week after it wrapped its third season, showing tremendous binge traffic and people coming back to the show who maybe had left it. Running Point also remains in the top 10, not only proving how strong that show is, already renewed for season 2, but how weak Daredevil is. That Daredevil, in the midst of its run, can't get into the top 10, but Running Point is still in the top 10 a month after it dropped as a binge on Netflix. Whew! Maybe Daredevil should go back to being a binge show, especially since with this, at least this first season, it wasn't big on week-to-week surprises, although it still did manage to trend on social media, but its viewership, as you can see, is not great. Although, again, streaming is a different animal, as perhaps viewership numbers are less valuable to Disney than being able to combat churn. Still, it's embarrassing that a show that was such a big deal for them publicity-wise and that does so well on social media can't chart. Do you think Daredevil's lack of placement on these charts is embarrassing? And talk about embarrassing, on the movies chart, you see The Electric State in its first full week on Nielsen's charts, and it not only has dropped to third place on this movies chart, but was unable to stay on the overall chart. But hooray, peeps are still watching Craven on Netflix. I'm telling you, it's a solid movie. Over on Netflix's chart, Sophia Carson is still number 1. She still has the number 1 movie for the third week in a row, solidifying her status as a Netflix star alongside Millie Bobby Brown and Joey King. I don't think she's quite at the Millie Bobby Brown level, but she's definitely a Joey King. With shows, Adolescence might have slipped to number 2 in its 5th week on Netflix, but on the all-time chart, it has done it. It has climbed to third place, putting it in iconic company alongside Wednesday, Stranger Things, and Squid Game. I don't think it will top Stranger Things season 4, but we'll see. It's still in striking distance. It could happen. Netflix is doing very well in shows overall, with 4 relatively new shows in their first or second weeks on the service doing over 5 million views apiece. That's particularly impressive for Black Mirror, now in its 7th season. And The Residence has fallen off a month out, itself a month out, but at least it's still on this chart. It's nerve-wracking that we still haven't gotten a season 2 announcement. The longer it takes, the less likely that it's going to happen. Sadness. I really want a season 2. Then on digital with Apple's charts, talk about embarrassing. More embarrassment for Disney as their latest Marvel movie, Captain America, which just dropped on digital. It was at number 1 earlier in the week when it first dropped, but right now it's at number 2 behind Jason Statham's much cheaper action film. Soderbergh's Black Bag continues to do very well on digital. As I said in my review, you made a streaming movie, Soderbergh. And Mickey 17 also is doing better on digital than it did in theaters. And it's Easter! And wow, Passion of the Christ is the top pick for audiences, which bodes very well for Mel Gibson's sequel, which is finally heading into production this summer for a 2026 release. With the current climate, in many ways, I think that sequel for Passion of the Christ could be big, extremely big, and other studios would be wise to give it space. Now, right now, Super Mario Bros. Is going to open for Easter again in 2026, repeating what they did the first time around to great success. They made $1 billion. But will they find themselves going head-to-head with The Passion 2? We'll see what Mel Gibson chooses as a release date. He hasn't said it yet. And the first film, interestingly, back in 2004, opened at the end of February. It wasn't even a holiday weekend, but it opened at the end of February. And it was in the top 5 at the box office for weeks, for 7 weeks, all the way through Easter. It did extremely well. And to this day, is the second highest grossing R-rated film of all time domestically, and worldwide, it's number 10. That's incredible. I'm very interested in The Passion of the Christ too. Hop also did very well this year, as you can see, while classic Easter film The 10 Commandments falls just outside the top 10, giving you an idea of the current public mindset, going with Gibson's more visceral modern film over Cecil B. DeMille's old school one. What's your Easter movie this year, both in theaters and at home? I'm multifaceted. I saw Sinners, I reviewed it, and this weekend I not only watched the 10 Commandments yesterday, the making of and the film, and then this evening, actually, my family has chosen Passion of the Christ. Very interesting. So you can watch a bunch of these things, but I'm curious, what are you watching for Easter? As for this coming weekend, it's the last one before the summer movie season officially kicks off. And we have 2 last-minute contenders. Again, there's The Accountant 2 and Sony's Until Dawn, hoping to cash in on the current video game adaptation craze. Star Wars Episode 3 will also be re-released in theaters. You know, it's a week after Star Wars Celebration, and then it's a little bit before May the 4th. But of course, they're releasing Thunderbolts basically at that time. But I think Episode 3 could do pretty well in theaters, especially after Dave Filoni has made the prequels so popular through his animated series. Hayden Christensen and his live action, now Dave Filoni has moved into live action. Hayden Christensen, confirmed to return for Ahsoka Season 2, was one of the biggest stars at this weekend's Star Wars Celebration. Star Wars tears a lot of these actors down. It's nice that eventually they build some of them back up. Sinners obviously hopes to hold on to the #1 spot, but with The Accountant 2 tracking in anywhere from 30 to 40 million, that's pretty amazing for The Accountant 2, Sinners would have to almost have no drop at all in its second weekend. But that is possible. That could happen. On digital, Ash drops on Tuesday, which barely got a theatrical release despite stars Isa Gonzalez and Aaron Paul. As for streaming movies, Tom Hardy, who's been very busy lately, he has a very popular, I think it's called Mobland or something, a very popular digital show, streaming show. But he has a new movie on Netflix from The Raid's Gareth Evans. I'm glad Gareth Evans hasn't given up. Could this be another Extraction, or will it come off as Extraction Light? Then with shows, speaking of Star Wars, after the damage done by The Acolyte and the Skeleton Crew barely registering, Star Wars is hoping to win fans back, or at least start the journey back with Season 2 of Andor. Now, Season 1 of Andor infamously struggled in the ratings, as you might recall, although it did get a couple of awards nominations. But this time, and this is the final season of Andor, Season 2 of Andor had already been greenlit before the show aired and had such poor ratings. But this time, Disney is trying something a little different. They will be dropping 3 episodes each week of Andor, basically creating 4 movies. No word yet on what time the episodes drop. I hope it's not also 9 p.m., because that would be ridiculous for a movie. I think they should, if they're going to drop that many episodes, they should do it earlier, like at around, I would say. You know, I don't know. 9 o'clock is a popular drop time. That's what Apple TV does. That's what Prime Video does. But if you're going to drop, and they do 3 episodes, Prime Video does. But I think for Star Wars, which tends to be family content, although Andor's not a family show, I would drop them at 7. But that's 4 o'clock Pacific time. What would you do? I don't. It's interesting. We'll see how this movie a week strategy works for them. What are your Andor viewing plans? I did a poll. Didn't look good for Andor. And Netflix but we'll see what word of mouth is like. And although when you're releasing 3 episodes, people also might feel it's impossible to catch up. So that, you know, it's a very interesting release strategy. We'll see how it works out. Again, Prime Video always starts with 3 episodes, but then it goes to weekly, whereas Andor will stay 3 episodes every week. And Netflix continues to be aggressive in the reality TV space, launching another competition with Battle Camp on Wednesday, while on Thursday, they will drop the final season of You. And the team behind The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel takes on the world of ballet, also for Prime Video. Will this be another home run? Luke Kirby, aka Lenny Bruce on Mrs. Maisel, carries over to this new show as one of the stars this time. And Apple's animated show Wondla returns with the 2nd season on Friday. And that's this week's Movie Math. What have you been watching? What do you plan to watch? And do you think Sinners can go the distance at the box office and also for awards season? Share those thoughts down below, subscribe today, and of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.